Guardians of the Veil, after 10 long years of waiting, BioWare is back with another installment in their legendary franchise. Not only did our team have the chance to play early, but we beat the game and have tackled the adventure on each of the 3 classes, pushing into the deepest, darkest regions of the Fade so that we can bring you this video. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're sharing our review of Dragon Age the Veilguard. Like I said in the intro, myself, Livid, and Schmo have been playing Dragon Age the Veilguard for about 2 weeks now, and let me just say how excited we are to finally be going hands-on with this game. Dragon Age was part of our childhood, and for that journey to span 15 plus years, it's incredible. Now, it's no secret that the Veilguard has sparked some controversy, real or imagined, but our goal here is to make sure you understand the core systems in the game and really break down our experience, the highs, the lows, so that you can make a decision whether or not the game is worth buying. So without further delay, let's dive right in. Dragon Age the Veilguard is set 10 years after the events of Dragon Age Inquisition. And I'll be honest here, never played that game, so going into Veilguard, I really didn't have a full sense of the story. What you'll immediately recognize about the game is that it is incredibly story-rich. Whether it's a cinematic that provides some overarching story, cutscene that gives you insight into your companions or allied factions, or even contextual lore elements such as a codex entry or memento, the game is brimming with storytelling, and that's something that was top of my list of things I wanted to see with this game. If you are a fan of high fantasy stories, then you will absolutely love Veilguard. The main story quest keeps you grounded in the overarching plot, but your companions end up being important vehicles for moving subplots of the story forward, providing you with far more background on them as individuals, the factions they come from, and the main thrust of the narrative. And it works well most of the time. Not every bit of writing is perfect, and there are certainly some moments that feel forced, awkward, or a bit cringe, but it all ties back to the larger story. What did really sell us collectively as a team is the superb voice acting and animations. Veilguard is built on EA's Frostbite engine, and this time around they really seem to be taking full advantage of its capabilities. Just in time, because word on the street is this could be the last time the team uses Frostbite. Conversations feel intimate, and that's because the writing, voice acting, and animations all work together extremely well. Of course, we're not going to dive too deep into the story because as a narrative-driven game, that's a huge part of what makes Veilguard enticing as a player. But as far as single-player RPGs go, it's a win. What I think has thrown players off going into this launch is the overall art direction and tone of Veilguard. There's no denying the game is much brighter and more vibrant than the other games in the series, and that has certainly rubbed some players the wrong way, but after exploring the various worlds the team has created, it's hard not to get lost in the beauty of each location. They are strikingly different, from the golden forests of Arlathan to the blight-consumed swamps of Hossberg wetlands. I was enthralled no matter where I went. Something clever the team does is use alluvions, magical mirrors, to move the player around the world, and at the center of that exploration is the Fade. This acts as a sort of purgatory between the mortal realm and the ethereal, and it all connects together nicely without being burdensome. I'll admit there's a very generous fast travel system in the game, but I still found myself running most of the time, mainly because I enjoyed the visual treat of navigating through each world. It's fair to say that Veilguard does not have the same dark fantasy aesthetic as the other games in the series, but there are certainly still elements that are dark, it's just not overplayed. When you step through an alluvion, you'll enter a new part of the world, and this is where things get a little interesting, because Dragon Age the Veilguard is not an open world game. Within each region, there are certainly areas to explore and optional paths to discover, but things are confined. What makes this confusing, at least to start, is that when you visit a region for the first time, there are going to be areas that are out of reach, either because you don't have the companion ability needed to unblock a path, or because the game physically blocks you. I can't speak for the other guys on the team, but this frustrated me personally because I would clearly see some sort of chest or lootable and then spend 10 to 15 minutes trying to figure out how to reach it, only to realize the game was intentionally blocking my access because of the quest that I was on. What I eventually realized was that the game opens up once you return to an area, in exploration mode. That ties into something our team is incredibly tapped into when it comes to any game that we play: secrets. If you've been following the channel for any stretch of time, you know that's something we care deeply about in the games that we play. Veilguard certainly has secrets, but in the grand scheme of how secret they actually are, they're not wildly impressive. Most things that are obtained can be seen, and the game never really hides secrets from you beyond what you can actually see with your own two eyes. It's very clearly intentional, but it's made slightly worse by the fact that most secrets are tied to puzzles, and those puzzles are just very simple. There's a lot of rotating statues and moving beams of light, and while that's fine, it's not that engaging. Veilguard could have easily snuck in some really gnarly secrets and made exploration an even bigger part of the game experience, but they opted for accessibility. If you zoom out, a lot of Veilguard is simply handed to you. You have to work, just not exceptionally hard, and in the era of Elden Ring, Black Myth Wukong, and God of War, it's a clear step in a more casual direction. However, on the other side of the secret is almost always something worth talking about. On numerous occasions, we complete a puzzle or secret quest and obtain a unique item. As the name suggests, these items are unlike anything else in the game, and on multiple occasions, we get fired up finding one of these elusive pieces of gear because they can genuinely transform a build. In fact, gearing in Veilguard is pretty unique, and while I don't think everyone on the team loved it to start, it's fair to say we're all big fans of it after playing through the game. Now to start, lootables are everywhere. You can't go more than 10 steps without finding something to interact with, and while that shot of dopamine was nice early on, it becomes the single most cumbersome aspect of the game and breaks your focus constantly. Because you're always looking around for something to loot, missions end up artificially extended, but you need that loot in order to sell valuables to factions, build reputation, and gain access to new gear. Miraculously, the team somehow has made finding loot a burden and borderline immersion breaking. However, scattered amongst all the valuables are dozens of pieces of gear tailored for each of the 3 classes in the game. What's unique is that you can actually find the same piece of gear multiple times throughout your adventure, either in a chest or by purchasing it at a faction vendor. And each time you find a copy, the rarity of the item increases. Each time an item ranks up, a new passive bonus is unlocked. By the end of your adventure, you have dozens of items to choose from, and with the game's really generous flexibility around respecking and builds, you have so much choice at your fingertips, it's almost overwhelming. When you factor in that each of the 7 companions in the game also have a set of loot that you need to maintain, trust me when I say gear is a huge part of the Veilguard experience. What's equally huge are the companions I just mentioned, of which there are 7 you actively recruit to your team. Each companion brings with them a wildly different background and personality, and while you certainly won't love all of them, I have no doubt at least a couple will resonate for you. For me, it was the Grey Warden Davrin and the Antivan Crow Lucanus, both of whom I just thought were really cool characters from top to bottom. Each companion resides in a different part of the lighthouse, the hub area, and throughout your adventure you can check in with them, learning more about their backstory and picking up quests that not only further their story, but also give you the best opportunity to acquire new gear for that specific companion. As I said before, the writing, voice acting, and animations are fantastic, and at times our entire team felt more connected to the companion stories than the main story. That's saying something. You'll have hundreds of conversations with your party over the course of the game, and throughout those interactions, the team will start to form opinions about you. This all feeds into the game's reputation and relationship system. On an individual level, you have the chance to improve your bond with each of these 7 companions. Depending on how strong that bond is, does have an impact on the outcome of the final quest line, which of course, we're not going to spoil. Each companion also comes from a faction, and it's equally important to build that reputation for a variety of reasons. On one hand, building your rep gives you access to new items at the faction vendor. We're talking everything from new weapons and armor for you and your companions, to decorations and gifts that can increase your bond with individual companions on your team. Your faction reputation will also influence the final quest in the game, so keep that in mind. To that point, I do want to say that Dragon Age is a very traditional RPG, and that the final quest of the game is quite literally the final quest of the game. Don't expect endgame content grinds or anything even remotely similar after the credits roll, because once the game is over, it's over. I say all of this because at some point, right before you embark on that final quest, the game warns you. I appreciate this because there are tons of optional things to do on the side, and without that heads up, you'd never know you were about to reach the end of the journey. Personally, I would have loved to see the game continue in some fashion after the credits roll, but there's nothing wrong with a clean-cut ending. In fact, more games should be doing just that. Enjoy the ride for what it is, and then say goodbye when it's all over. We've talked a lot about Veilguard, but the one thing we've yet to really crack into is the action itself, which is a huge part of the experience. Let's not kid ourselves. The game gives you a lot of freedom to make a character that fits your playstyle, but one decision you'll have to make early on is what class to play, locking you into a decision for the rest of the game. We have a great video already up on the channel helping you make that choice, so be sure to check it out. As far as our team goes, I was playing the Mage, Livid was on a Rogue, and Schmo was on a Warrior. Combat is incredibly fluid, especially if you tap into the game's quick action commands that allow you to issue orders to your companions without pulling up the full interface. Each class has their own version of a quick attack and a heavy attack, and in the case of the Mage and the Warrior, they each have 2 sets of primary weapons. The Rogue is a bit unique in that it has dual-wield primary weapons and a bow. As you're attacking, dodging, and parrying enemy attacks, you'll build up your class resource and can spend that on 3 active abilities and an ultimate that you have equipped. What I really love about these is just how far Veilguard pushes the standard fantasy of these 3 iconic archetypes. There's a lot of familiarity with skills, but also a few that feel quite refreshing and unique to Dragon Age, and because the game allows you to respec at any time, you have unlimited freedom to explore different combinations of skills until you land on something that you like. Once you reach level 20, you'll be able to take this a step further with specializations, and even though you can't take full advantage of this until level 30 and beyond, each specialization pushes your class identity towards one very specific and often unique aspect of what makes the class great. I love this system, full stop, and I have to hand it to BioWare for making a skill tree system that's not only super accessible, but also genuinely interesting. There's more than enough to sink your teeth into, and plenty of nodes that don't just provide a flat stat boost, but rather change up something about your class and the way it plays. We've talked about this time and time again here on the channel with RPGs and skill tree systems, and the team really did find a nice balance with their approach. Taking all of this into the actual game is also incredibly easy. You have to hand it to the team for tuning the difficulty in such a way that you never really notice how well and interconnected everything really is. Combat boils down to a rather straightforward rock, paper, scissors system where your various attacks will chip away at the enemy's health bar depending on what type of defenses that they have. You can do the work yourself or lean on your companions to come in and do some of the heavy lifting for you, but what's impressive is just how simple and smooth it all really is. You can choose to keep things surface level if you don't want to spend the time to deep dive into min-maxing your build, but you can also take the time to really fine-tune your loadout so you're maximizing every second you spend in combat. That spectrum is broad, and the game services fans on either side of that equation. When playing with a controller, things are intuitive and buttery smooth, but Livid was less than thrilled about how the action translated on a mouse and keyboard, feeling a lot more rigidity in the way his character moved and attacked than Josh and I felt on a controller. Truth is, the game was designed with controllers in mind, and while PC players might not love that, it's just the reality of the situation. Luckily for all our PC friends out there, you can customize most of the key bindings. Even still, combat is designed in such a way that you're stringing together moves in an absolute blaze of skills and abilities. Talk about a fireworks show. All 3 classes have skills that jump off the screen, and when you're triggering one after the next, it's really quite something. Now, if I were to sum up the action in just a sentence or two, I'd say the Veilguard gives the player a lot of control to shape their character's combat identity. The action is smooth, and while not every class plays the same, the team did a masterful job making the action flow, which makes the moment-to-moment gameplay more visceral and satisfying. So with the main story completed and over 100 plus hours under our belts across all 3 classes, where do we ultimately land on the game? Dragon Age: The Veilguard is an excellent successor and new entry in this iconic franchise. It's more vivid and vibrant than previous games, and while not everyone is going to like that, you get used to it quickly given how gorgeous parts of the world are and how engaging the characters become. Veilguard is more casual friendly, that's a fact, with combat that's more accessible and quest and world design that feels more straightforward. but at the heart of the game is a deep and driving narrative with interesting characters, autonomy of choice, and an incredible high fantasy adventure that we enjoyed here at Legacy Gaming. Friends, as always, we appreciate you checking out another video here on the channel. We'd love to know your thoughts on Veilguard once you have the chance to play, so leave us a comment down below, and if you appreciate the work that went into creating this video, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.